When they announced that we couldn't have any more petrol, they also announced that the distributor arm in the car must be taken out. Every car that was going to be laid up in a garage must be absolutely immobile. All the distributor arms were to be removed and taken to the nearest police station. My husband took the distributor arm off, and off we went to the police station. And he said to them, what you going to do with them? So he said, well, they're going away, but he said, I can't tell you where they're going to. He said, but I'm going to give you a card with a number on it, which you'll sign both of them. There was 2 cards, one to be tied onto the distributor arm and the other one he was to have. And he said, now let me tell you that you must take great care of this one that I'm giving you, because if it's lost, you don't get your distributor arm back at the end of the war. In 1945, when the war in Europe ended, it was only about a month I don't think it was 2 months, when they said we could have our 4 gallons of petrol back. We jumped for joy. We were so excited. We knew the war had ended, the war in Europe had ended, and we were very pleased about that. We went to the police station. My husband produced his card with his number and his signature on, and they found the distributor arm and offered it to him, and it was the one because his signature and the card was on. And he said, would you mind telling me where it's been all this time? He said, yes, I can tell you. He said, it's been to Stoke-on-Trent. We began to think about holidays, and we saved the petrol. Of course, we didn't use it for anything. We didn't do much running around. My husband, we couldn't go very far, of course, with only 4 gallons of petrol. So my husband said, well, somebody at work had told him there was a good inn in Muchwenlock, and that was a good place to go into the country, and we'd enjoy it there if we went. So we wrote and booked up to go, and it was an inn, and it was very comfortable. The landlady was a very nice person, very jolly, and we settled into the house very comfortably. The first day when we got there, of course we were finding our way about. We hadn't been anywhere very much. And suddenly the landlord came in and he called to my husband and he said, oh, Mr. Barber, could you help me? He said, the pigs have got out. So my husband said, oh, yes, certainly. And they handed him a stick. Well, he'd never had anything to do with pigs before, of course, and he got this stick, you see, and to the pigs, and there was outside the back door, there was a great big yard, and then at the far end there was this pigsty. Well, he started getting this pig, the one pig, along towards the door of the pigsty, and suddenly the pig turned round and came towards him, and my husband turned round and ran with the pig running after him. Oh dear, how we laughed. For years we laughed about Don being chased by the pig. But he went back again with a stick and started again, and at last they got them into the pigsty. And then when they were walking across the yard, after they'd got the pigs all safely in the sty, the landlord said, look, he said, I've got pretty well a petrol. Would you like some? So my husband said, petrol? Oh, my goodness, he said, it's in very short supply where I come from. And he said, well, I don't use an awful lot, he said. I've got pretty well, he said. Of course, it's dear, he said, but if you don't mind that, he said, it's 5 shillings a gallon. He said, I could let you have 4 gallons. So my husband's face all lit up and he said, oh, wonderful. He said, we'll be able to really go out and enjoy ourselves if we've got all this petrol. But he said to me, what a price, Win. afterwards. He said, "What a price, 5 shillings a gallon." Petrol in those days was only 1 shilling a gallon. So to pay 5 shillings, to pay £1 for 4 gallons, was a very big item. But anyway, we had this petrol, and we were able to take the children to Shrewsbury, and we went all around Shropshire. It was really lovely. We had a lovely holiday. Towards the middle of the week, or towards the end of the week, one morning when we came down to breakfast, there was a lady and a gentleman sitting at the table. It was a doctor and his wife. They said good morning to us, and we sat down, and my husband and I and the 2 children, and we were waiting for them to bring the breakfast in. And this doctor and his wife were very pleasant, and they talked about the weather and if we were having a good time and all that kind of thing. And then he turned to my husband and he said, "Have you seen the paper?" So Don said, "No," he said, "I haven't been down to the paper shop yet this morning." And he said, "Oh, have a look at mine." And he threw his paper across the table to my husband, and in great big letters across the top of the paper it said "bomb." And my husband began reading it, and he went quite white, and he said, "Oh, how terrible. Oh, what a dreadful thing. Oh, how awful. What a dreadful thing to happen." And I said, "What is it, Don?" And he said, "They've dropped the bomb," he said, "on a place called Hiroshima." He said, "and it's wiped the town completely out." He said, "It's disaster. It must be terrible, Win. Awful. I mean, we'd had bombings where a road or a few houses, but to think of a whole town being demolished was terrible." And he said, "Oh dear, why do they have to do these things?" And this doctor looked at him and he said, "Well," he said, "I know it's terrible," he said, "but," he said, "I'm pretty sure," he said, "that this will be the end of the Japanese war." He said, "and there'll be no more men being killed," he said, "out there." And he said, "That's the one bright star among it, is that it will be probably the end of the Japanese war."
Scientists, British and American, have made the atomic bomb at last. The first one was dropped on a Japanese city this morning. It was designed for a detonation equal to 20,000 tons of high explosives. That's 2,000 times the power of one of the RAF's 10-ton bombs of orthodox design.
So we sat there and they brought the breakfast in, and, well, just before they brought the breakfast in, this doctor reached into his inside pocket and pulled out, and he said to my husband, "Have a look at that." And he offered him what looked like a pencil. And my husband said, "Oh, what's this?" he said. And the doctor said, "Write your name on the top of the paper." So this newspaper he'd got there, he put his, he wrote D.S. Barber on it, his signature. And the doctor said, "Now put your finger across it." So my husband put his finger across it, and of course it didn't smudge. Well, now ordinary ink, you have to wait for it to dry or use blotting paper to blot it. And this was dry immediately. You could rub it with your finger and nothing happened. So my husband said, "Oh, my word, wherever did you get that from?" And he said, "Well, there's only a few about as yet." He said, "but a friend of mine sent it me." He said, "But I guarantee that in 2 years' time, everybody'll be using this pen. These pens like this," he said. "It's goodbye to the old pen and ink." So we were laughing about that, you see. We said, "Well, that's wonderful. I didn't have a go with the pen." But he said, "It's called a biro." And now, whenever I hear anybody talks about Hiroshima and the bomb dropping and Nagasaki and how awful that was, I always think of the biro pen and think that was the day the biro pen came.